part 2 on how to teach your more experienced or older beginners improvisation. And so part 1 we've already done, and we kind of mainly focused on the older beginners in that webinar. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. It was really cool. We had a lot of great comments about that one. So welcome to part 2. Welcome to our inner musician members. Fantastic. Welcome aboard, all you teachers. Welcome to teachers around the world who have found us through Facebook or through our email list. And also a special welcome to our inner circle friends that have come over. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. It's going to be pretty packed, so I'm not going to do too much small talk here. Basically, we're going to go through some fun stuff, and let's just have a quick look at a couple of things we'll cover. So we're going to jump into chord inversions very, very briefly, because that's pretty self-explanatory, but a good way to start teaching your students that. The landscape of chords, scale degrees from chord extensions. That might be something you haven't come across before. We've got a little freebie on that one right at the end of our webinar today, so make sure you hang around. Playing with chord flavors. Who doesn't like to spice up what's going on? Circle of fifths, 4 chord progressions, and just very briefly, we're going to have a look at some challenging rhythms, perhaps getting you a little bit out of the box of just the 4/4 rhythms. So let's jump straight in. We're going to have a look at quite a few videos today that I've shot over in my studio. What I want you to do is, while you're listening, I want you to think about comments or questions that you might have. Jot them down while you're listening, pop them into our chat box, and that way we've got just a couple of minutes after each video for me to have a look at some of your questions, and that way we'll keep this nice and interactive. But if you can keep your questions very specific to the video that we've just shown, that will help us to stay on track. And then, hey, if we can be really efficient with our conversation, then perhaps at the end of the seminar or the webinar, we can check out sort of more general questions that you might have of subjects that are coming up from this webinar. So without further ado, let's get straight into our very first topic, which is chord inversions. Have a look at this. I have my students, my more advanced students, who are now trying to work out a little bit more than just what we've given them in the player story in the first year, to really improvise around the morning song with the C, F and G, but this time we're going to ask them to play in using inversions. And the best way to learn inversions is to just literally arpeggiate up and down the piano, either in single notes and backwards again, so mixing it up and going up, down, up, down, up, down. But of course also using pairs, so then they're really starting to form the basis of using inversions. So perhaps something like this. So really just messing it around a little bit like that, using all your plateau chords, so these C, F and G. So there you go. What did you think, guys? Look, it's pretty straightforward, you know, inversions. But what I find is that it can be overwhelming for students to start improvising straight away with inversions, because it really takes a little bit of effort to flip over those chords, not just for our tiny little students. Certainly for them, there's some challenges there in orientating across an entire keyboard. But even for our older beginners, that can be quite a big job. So just there we were talking about introducing inversions with an arpeggiated outlook, if you like, but instead of adding full chords, just adding pairs of notes from those from those inversions. So Shamara, you're just asking, do you talk about fingering when using inversions? You know what, I don't, because what we're leading to is for them to find a way of naturally working through flipped chord tones, especially if they're going to start to play right-hand improvs. You want them to actually start working out, wherever I am on the keyboard, where will I find my best fingering that's going to transport me to where I need to go. And so I guess the same reason that I don't teach scale as a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 necessarily, what I do is teach scale around the idea of jumping in at any point and figuring out what your fingering needs to be to get you around the melody that you're creating spontaneously. Remembering that we're really talking about using scale for one purpose in this setting, and that is understanding what notes are available to you. So great question. Thank you, Shamara. Alrighty, there's no other comments in that box. So that was pretty straightforward, right? Let's have a look at the next one. So we're going to keep moving forward. So this video is about the landscape of the chord. And, you know, this is taught in many ways around the world in different methodologies. And I want you to have a look at this one. This is how I teach it in a musician. Let's have a listen.
Okay, so I thought we'd kick us off with talking about lead sheets and playing chords. These are experienced players, experienced students, perhaps they're older students. I want to just start with talking about how I teach chords in my studio. So I talk about chords having shapes. That's a pretty common kind of method for teaching chords. My shapes are plateaus, mountains, valleys, and hillsides. So let me just talk about those. So we have 3 plateau shapes in the hand, which means they're all whites. So of course you know that they're going to be C, F, and G, because if you put a piece of gum on the piano, which you'll never do, and you stretch it out, it will make a flat shape, right? My next set of chords are what I affectionately call my dear chords. That's the D, E, and A chord. And of course, these are all major chords. Well, they're my mountain chords. So my deer graze on the mountains. And so my D chord has D, F sharp, and A. So it goes up as a peak. Of course, E and A is the same. And then I have my valley chords. And so they're obviously the opposite of the deer chords. So now we've got D flat, F, and A flat, belonging to the D flat chord. Same with the E flat and the A flat. So plateau chords, C, F, and G, mountains, D, E, and A, and valleys, D flat, E flat, and A flat. And of course we've got the 2 hillsides, and that's the B chord and the B flat chord. So with that, you're either going to go up the hillside or come down the hillside. So if it's a B and it's indicating a white note, it means you've got to go up to the flats to go up the hill. So that would be your B chord, and the opposite happens. So if you're on a B flat, you're on a black, and you're going to go down to the whites. So it's a black plus 2 whites. There's your B flat chord.
So I don't know, you guys, if you use those kind of ideas of creating those picture landscapes to shape these chords around. So Tim, you're using those, liking those analogies. That's awesome, fantastic, and cool from Irene Thompson. Beautiful. Hey, welcome, guys. Yeah, I just find that if you can create these ideas of what does the picture look like, they have that in their mind. And it just makes all the difference, because I can quickly say to a student when they're accidentally making a minor out of one of those mountain chords, for example, I can just say, hey, whoa, where's the mountain? You need a mountain for that chord. You know, where are the deer grazing? They're on the mountain. That's one of your deer chords. So that works really well. And of course, you want to get these chords into your students' hands really quickly. Yeah, so Tim's talking about hamburger chords. I've heard that too, Tim. I can't quite get my head around the hamburger idea. It makes me too hungry while I teach. So yeah, I love that. Alrighty. So you want to get your students familiar with these chords. We're going to delve into that a little bit more, a little further down the track today, as we open up the whole idea of using the circle of fifths, which you may or may not use in your studio. You definitely should use it, so we'll get into that. And also with our next video, which is looking at scale degrees and getting those scale degrees primarily from our triads. So let's jump straight in there. And this one, I think maybe we'll come up with some slightly different concepts that maybe you haven't seen before. So let's go for those.
When you've got your triad position of your root position chord, and let's just use C for the moment, when I play that chord, I really have three components of my, my scale. I've got the first degree, the third degree, and the fifth degree. So we're done and dusted for a big percentage of the scale. If I add a second, I simply have to take my thumb and move it up a whole step. And so I'm going to take my thumb and move it to D, and that's an add 9 chord or an add 2 chord. I can find the scale tone 4 by doing exactly the same thing from finger 5. So go down a whole step. So again, you've got 1, 3, 5. To find 2, go up a step from 1. And to find 4, go down a step from 5. So now I've got 1, 3 and 5, 1, 2 and 5, and 1, 4 and 5. So in actual fact, what I've done is I've added the suspended qualities of a chord in order to find the tone of 2 and 4 in a pentascale. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All of those notes come together and I've got the first 5 notes of a scale. All I then have to do is take my little finger up a whole note and I've got 6. So that's a really cool way of students quickly figuring out from any root position chord what the key signature is. So for example, if we take let's see, an A flat chord. All right, so I've got 1, 3 and 5 already a given. I can find 2 by going up a whole step from finger 1. That's my add 2 or add 9 chord. I can go into my suspended chord, in other words my 4th, by coming down a whole step from my 5th, and there it is there. And that resolves beautifully into the 3rd. 2nd resolves beautifully up into the 3rd. And we can find quickly our 6th by taking our little finger up a whole step. So we've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. 7 is easy. Just take your thumb and move it down a half step. Of course, this creates your major 7th chord extension. So now we've got the full A flat scale. All right, so that's how students can quickly find all 7 notes of any key signature by simply finding the root position in its tonic.
Okay, so don't forget all of those root position chords and finding out the tone scales are root position chords. They're the original triad of any major chord. So I don't know, what do you think, guys? To me, this opens up a whole new world when you're trying to teach scale, because now you've got all of those elements of the scale available to you, but it's all found in one hand position. So just moving notes, adding your 2 and your 4, adding your thumb higher, lower, all of those things can be taught really quickly in just a little handful of information. And I love it when you can distill that kind of information into a very small space. Makes sense for your little children, makes sense for your older children, and even your advanced students who are really trying to work out what's my key signature around this particular chord, or, you know, that sort of thing. So Irene Thompson went a bit fast for you. Okay. You know what, you're going to have to forgive me on that one because we're cramming so much information in here. But you're right. You can go back and have a look over it. We're going to be available on YouTube as a webinar. And of course, for our inner musician members, you've got this on your membership site as soon as we go off air. We'll be uploading it there for you. And you'll see all of those little videos as separate clips, so you can go straight in there and just look at exactly what you want, along with, of course, so much other resource material that you can find when you're in our membership. So Shamara, you've got a question. Do you use your ear to determine if the neighbour note is a tone or a semitone away? What we're remembering here is that we're kind of navigating what those notes are, and they're hard and fast. So yes, your ear is hearing them because you're playing them as, you know, you're hearing them as you're playing them. But the rules are there. If you've got a 1, 3, 5, then, and you know your root position chords and your landscaper chords, this is that next step. How do you fill in those notes of the scale that belongs to that key if you only have those 3 notes? So if you've got 1, 3, and 5, that's a given. To add your second and your fourth of your scale, just down a step and up a step. So yes, you are using full tones there, not half tones, or whole steps, not half steps. And then to find your major 7, down a half step from your thumb. To find your 7th chord, a whole step down from your thumb. Find your 6th, a whole step up from your 5th finger. So we're all good as far as knowing what those are. And yes, we're using our ears because we want our students to hear what these sounds are. Of course, we're also going to be able to develop quickly the idea of, once you've got your triads, finding all your minor chords by flattening that third. And it's all on that diagram. So just to let you know, again, we're going to give out that diagram as a freebie at the end of our webinar. So you can go straight in there and you can print it off and you're good to go. Plus, of course, our inner musician teachers have that resource, and our students will have that resource in our website. So they're using that website all the time to access the movies and all of the resources. So they're just going to be able to jump on that straight away. All right, let's keep moving forward. And I think it just gets more exciting as we move in and we delve in deeper to these ideas of how do we get our fundamentals going so that we have this freedom to explore improvisation. So let's go straight in and have a look at our next little snapshot video. So this one I've called chord flavors. So we now know our scale degrees. Let's jump in and have a look what happens when we use those scale degrees to create chords that are a little bit beyond our regular chords, and what are the flavors that they add to our improvisation. We don't want to learn this as theory. We want to learn it as, what does it do? What emotionally does this do to me when I connect it with some great chord extensions or modifications? Let's have a look.
Let's now talk about how our advanced students could take the morning song and simply create a beautiful improvisation using all of those tonal flavors of just the root position chord, everything staying under your hand in the same way. So in other words, just pulsing and listening, I could add all those elements when I feel like it. There's a major 7th there. Just take your thumb down a half step back into the 7th, back to your major 7th. Make it a minor by flattening the 3rd. Go into a minor major 7th and a minor 7th with a 6th, 2nd, 4th, back to C major. So you can see all I've done is I've just musically kind of comped around, just keeping my C in my bass, and I've practiced all of the extensions really, because your second becomes a ninth, your fourth becomes an 11th, your sixth becomes a 13th. So you've got all of the extensions of any chord you want, all within grasp, all within in your hand position. So it's a really cool way of teaching chords, and it's musical. So I might then say to my students, okay, we're going to go back into the morning song, and I want you to take the scene of the movie of the morning song, and let's go ahead and let's actually limit our palette. Let's stay in C, but of course you can go anywhere you like. You might have a student create a chord progression and just comp around on those chords, using all of those progressions as they come through. It's a really cool way to do it. So I'm going to give you a little demo of just comping on a C to our morning song, and I will actually use some arpeggiating as well, so that they're also figuring out a few inversions and adding those notes, incorporating it into a melody-like kind of improv. Let's see what it looks like. Here I've split my left hand into an octave fifth, which just gives a nice level of flavour to that. So it's pretty easy to do, just keeping in mind that what we're trying to do is review all of our chord extensions and flavors that come out musically, because everything we do, we want to give our students musical projects that really get them to listen to the sounds they're making and realize what happens when I flavor my improv at any moment when I change that sort of tonality.
So, what did you think? So, let's have a look at what you've been writing while I've been away there. So, Shamara, beautiful way to drill these extensions. I know it. It's exactly right. And I'm not a drill girl. I don't like to drill. And I really don't like to require my students to drill because it's just more musical for me. But if you can get your students feeling a natural pulse and feeling like they're actually there in this beautiful forest with those birds around you, whatever your scene is, to actually be learning and, as you said, drilling through, but understanding what happens when I add that major seventh compared to what happens when I add the seventh, what happens when I add the second compared to what happens when I add the fourth, and where does it make me want to go? Oh, these are kind of like suspension, like they want to take me somewhere. Oh, that's right. when we did Ocean Lullaby, we learned about suspended chords resolving back into the third, into the normal major triad. So all of these things actually get us to learn these extensions, but to learn what they do. What do they do to that chord? And it's really useful to stay in that one chord to really find out and experiment. How does this affect it? That's great. So is the left hand an octave with the pulsing thumb? Yeah, definitely. And you can also, as I said at the end there, just add that split 5, which is really the split octave with the 5th in the middle. So with that, I'm teaching my older students, because my little tiny ones aren't big enough to create that octave, although they can have a go at it, but it is quite an epic thing for them to cruise across the keyboard like that while they're doing these chords in the right hand. So really keeping it simple enough for any student at whatever level they're at to be able to jump in and have an instant success, because we don't want to sit there for weeks and weeks and months trying to get the same chord or the same feel or the same style into their hands. We want to do it in a whole multitude of ways. Come back again in, 3 weeks and they'll go, oh my goodness, like when I first tried this wasn't really feeling comfortable. And now that I've done this and that, I come back to it and, oh, wow, this is awesome. So yeah, keeping that rhythmic style while you're improving and hearing the sounds of the chords, doing it often, doing it in multiple octaves, don't just sit in the middle. And I love that often my students will just venture out every now and again and play through those chord tones using their extensions and hearing what those sounds are as they move across perhaps the top end of the piano and giving me a really melodic interlude there amongst those chord extensions. It's really, really nice. All right, so I reckon we're ready to keep exploring. Let's have a look. Oh, and by the way, you noticed that little hand freebie there. So that's the one that we're going to give you at the end of this webinar. And hopefully sort of seeing it a couple of times more, it's starting to kind of lock into place. Alrighty, the circle of fifths. Love this. Let's just go straight there.
Okay, so let's keep talking about chord progressions, chords, lead sheets in order to advance our students further in their understanding of improvisation. We're going to talk about the cycle of fifths. So I've got this fantastic iPad app here. It's called Circle of Fifths Opus 1. It's fantastic. What I really love about it is that I can rotate these chords at any point and have my students play a complete improv using another key signature. So we've got all of the key signatures here. I'm going to stick on C just because it's easy for me to explain anything as I go from C, but you definitely want your students to be very familiar with wrapping their heads around any chord progression or key signature. So for those who aren't using the cycle of fifths in your studio, let's do a really fast run through. In red at the very top, we've got our key signature, and that's chord 1, so that's the tonic. Chord 4 is to the left, which is the F. Chord 5 to the right, which is G. And then on the inside of that curve, we've got our minor chords that we can choose from to make a pretty cool improv. Having said that, I've used these chords wrapping around and just kind of enjoying it. And I have to say, I get a little bit bored with the sounds because they're pretty basic, and my advanced students are really looking for something more interesting. So one little thing, we're going to actually go a little further into creating some entirely different sounds further into this webinar, but for now, if we're just going to use the cycle of fifth chords, we can actually use the concept of using split chords in our improv. So I wanted to explain this idea. It just kind of juggles it up a little bit, and have a go, see what you think. If you don't like it, no problem, but it's just something to spice things up. So as we see on this cycle, the C and the A line up, The F and the D line up, and the G and the E line up. And with those pairs, there's only ever one note that's different. So 2 out of 3 notes are always the same on each pair. So those are great chords to split with your bass and your chord. So for example, you might start on a C bass, but maybe you play an A minor in the chord. When you go to the A bass, play a C in the chord. It's nice. Play, if I went to go to D minor next, I might play an F chord. Then I'll go to the D minor chord with an F bass. I might go to a G chord with an E in the bass, and then swip it over the other way. And notice I quickly snuck in a B in there as well as part of that, that G chord structure. So that's a really fun thing to do. It takes a little bit to get your head around, so just do it slowly. But you can see that the flavors are just slightly different, and I really like that. I've got the Choral Garden here ready to go, and I'm going to do a quick little, not even the full improv, but just a once round rap, just to see how that feels in my hand.
Alrighty. So I think the thing that you'll have your students start to discover when they start to look at split chords, because it's such a common thing in chord progressions, you want them to know how to play a split chord, how to read it with a slash in the middle. But what they'll discover is, particularly with that little project there, is that when you split a major chord with its minor, all you're really doing is adding the sixth. So there's only ever one note that's different. So let's say, for example, let's see if I can get this right without a keyboard in front of me. But if you've got a C chord, right, actually I've got a keyboard here, I'm going to do it here. So you've got a C chord and you want to split it with the A. All you're doing, the A minor, all you're doing is adding the sixth of your C chord with an A at the bottom. So, and then the opposite's true. So if you want to play say an A minor and you want to split it with a C, you're actually adding the seventh on the bottom. All right. So I don't know whether you followed that, but you know what? Go find out. Go and find out what am I actually adding when I change those chords, and use those pairs that are really easy to find on the circle of fifths, because they're all related, right? It's another great bonus of playing that way, is that you get to know what are your relative minors and majors. That's pretty cool. And again, we're not doing it as a theoretical exercise. We're actually learning what happens when we mix around music a little bit, when we juggle the rules or play around with them a little bit. What happens? And it's good fun. All right, so let's have a look at some comments here. So Tim has said, a new app I haven't found. Yeah, definitely, Tim. It is such a cool app. I tell you why I love it. You don't have to switch your paper around to make the focus on the top. You just spin the wheel and it's so beautiful. And of course, my kids love it. My adults love it. They all sit there and they're fully engaged on that iPad on the piano. And unfortunately, I don't believe it's available for Android. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, it's really cool. And So Tim also says, I like that idea of changing the bass notes within the set of 6 chords. Yeah, cool. It just changes it up a little bit. And I'm always looking for ways, how can I spice this up? How do I make this fresh and new again instead of the same ideas again? And Irene Thompson, great ideas to play around with, Linda. Thanks. You're very welcome. All right. So I don't think that I need to talk any more about that. I had my students just yesterday. I have 2 brothers that come and share. In fact, they're both, one's 15, one's 18, and they're both on the autism spectrum somewhere. They're adorable young men to teach. And yesterday, this exercise is exactly what we were doing. And they just came up with some really astonishing sounds. One of them plays in a very classical manner, and they were always duetting. So he'll be down on the bottom of the piano and he'll be doing this very classical chordal arrangement, while his brother improvs a right hand on top, and then we switch them over. And the younger one, his idol is Hans Zimmer, okay? So I said to him, okay, so what's the name of this improvisation you're going to do? And they'd both chosen to do the key of D, so we had that on the circle of fifths up on the top. And he said, it's called Mysterious. And I thought, oh, cool. Okay, so he sat down and, they're playing away, and it was very mysterious and very open and airy and kind of spooky. And I was just dreaming. I was off. I was definitely on another planet in this spooky, eerie place. And all of a sudden, bam, he comes on with this drumming, rolling power bass, and it's going, and I literally jumped off the stool. I got such a fright. And it was beautiful, because that's what music is about. Music is about bringing us to a place where we really experience emotionally this scene. And I said to him, okay, so, wow, what was your movie playing in your head for that one? And he's sort of into Interstellar at the moment. So he said, oh, it was one of the scenes. So he described that. And I tell you, it was magnificent. It was very cinematic, but it was rich and wonderful. So even just these little ideas, start with them and let your students open up where they're going to take it, and they'll take it to their favourite spots. Sometimes they'll keep revisiting that favourite spot, so you want to pull them out, put them in a new spot so that they're challenging themselves. And I guess that's the beauty of our program. The scenery, the movies are so broad, and the world's a big place, right? We want to play around with so many different environments. So Tim says Interstellar is a great soundtrack. Whoa, totally. Hans had his concert here last year, and it just so happened that his concert was the day I flew out to go to Spain. I was very cross. Timing was bad. So, next time he comes, Hans, you've got to come over to WA again. I've got to see you. It's my favourite too. All right, I digress. Let's kick on to our second last video, a little snap here. And this one is about our 4-chord progression, which I'm guessing all of you are familiar with. Let's check on out.
So let's keep going through some chord progressions. Obviously, the most well-known chord progression is the 4-chord progression that Axis of Awesome made famous. It's a YouTube clip that you definitely want to look at. There's a G-rated one. Highly recommend you check out that one. And then those chords are really handy for students to use as they make progressions for our movies. So the 4 chords that I'm talking about on that Axis of Awesome comedy hit is chord 1 to 5, 6 minor to 4, 6 minor to 4. So that's pretty cool. We can wrap around those again, put in every key, get used to that. But something I've just recently discovered is another very well used, overused, new contemporary chord progression. And I discovered it today, and it's called the sensitive female chord progression. And there's even a website dedicated to it. So that one has got lists and lists. I scroll pages and pages of these famous beautiful ballads that are written in this chord progression, and it's just a slight twist on those chords. But it starts with the 6 minor. So it goes something like this. 6 minor, 4, 1 to 5, and just keeps going on and on. Unless you change it like I just did. But that's a really interesting option to have a look at, just to change it up a little bit. Really fun to just go down and have a look at all those female, sensitive female compositions. However, some of those are actually, you know, really cool raps and all sorts of heavy beats. So yeah, it was just something kind of fun that I found today I thought you might like. So I thought I'd just have a little go at doing our female, sensitive female chord progression with a beautiful country like Japan.
There you go. The sensitive female chord progression. Woo! Got to go and check that out. It's a really cool thing. So let's have a listen. Tim is 6415. Oh, it's the 90s house music progression. There you go. Isn't that cool? Well, there you go. So they come in all sorts of labels. I like it. I really think it's got a nice twist on it. And maybe, you know, I'm an 90s baby. I wish I could say that. All right. So, you know, use these ideas that are already there. They're proven record. You know, these chords have made it. So, a little word of warning here. I have a young teenage guy who is so into creating and creativity and playing music that he loves. Sometimes it's hard to get him onto other stuff. But, you know, his teacher at school told them all about this awesome 4-chord thing. And, yeah, I'm finding it hard to drag him away from it now. So we're now specifically going into some of our other motifs in our scenes just to revisit them, to break that spell that he's under. But interestingly enough too, because he realizes those chords just go on and they can get very redundant, he's having to really stretch himself, and I'm pushing him and asking him to change it up. Change the rhythm, give a bridging passage, create a chorus that comes in and just uses something entirely different, breaks us out of that kind of attraction of those 4 chords that can get a little monotonous. So that's a good thing to, again, be aware of your individual students, find out where their weaknesses are and where their strengths are, because they're always going to go to their strengths, and we want to pull them across and let them explore some areas that they're not so familiar with as well. So it's really, really important. And of course, if they are using those 4 chords, well, we definitely want to get them to track across into every key around that circle. There's a huge, you know, year-long project right there. So good stuff, and always getting to know their piano, getting to know the sounds. By the end of having a year using these accompaniment ideas or chordal style of improvisation, they're going to have a really great, well-rounded understanding of the keyboard and of music and the structure of music and the structure of songs. Alrighty, we're doing so well, but I'm going to move you forward. We've got to get to our last video. Check this one out. This is on some challenging rhythms. Hope you enjoy.
With our advanced students, we're really going to be starting to see some more complex rhythms happening. And I love complex rhythms. I find them very challenging, so it's great for me to be able to sit down and muck around with them a little bit and get them in my hands. But we went away for the weekend. We were listening to a nice little jazz kind of playlist, and one of them was Dave Brubeck's Take 5. And I just loved it. You know what? I never put the two together, that Take 5 was in 5/4 time. Makes sense, right? Should have known that, but there we are. So I thought, hey, I'm going to give this to my students, come back at the end of our school holidays that we're doing at the moment, and let's see what they can do with it. So I'm going to just kind of rough cut it here a little bit, just to give you a bit of an idea. So a couple more rhythms. What about the tango? That's a really fun thing to do, and students are going to love that. I've selected to play this with Egypt. So we've got our beautiful desert sands. Again, that's in our travel notes. That's our last journey along the Play a Story program. And I just love this because it's got that lovely lilting feel that happens when we're on our camel riding through the desert. So this one happens to be in a mode, in a Spanish Phrygian mode. We're going to have a look at that a little bit later in some detail. But let's have a listen to this one, see what you think. I felt like I was in the middle of the desert. It was really cool. This is the experience that we want our students to have when they're playing music. We want to give them some motifs, some ideas, and let them run with it. Let them feel like they're listening to the wind that's whistling through the sand. They can feel the sand stinging their skin as they play that fantastic emotional tango, that very exotic sound. It's really exciting to see students, when they finish playing, just light up and go, wow, I really felt like I was there. So this is where we want to get our students to. It's not a matter of just learning notes, learning motifs. We want them to really experience it. That's the joy of playing music. So we've all heard of Coldplay's Clocks, right? That fantastic rhythm. The 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. It's beautiful, a little bit driving, but we don't always have to use it as a big heavy driving rhythm. I really love to use that idea playing through the seagrass pastures. So a lot of my students love this because it's got such a lilting sound to it when it's played beautifully. And it's very similar in actual fact to the music that's provided on the Provide Your Mood video that we have, where the movie is shown with I guess an emotional place card holder, if you want to put it that way. It's the thing that gets us into the zone. So this is a fun thing to give your advanced students. It takes a little while to get it working in their hands, but it's well worth it. So let's look at this one, just playing it through and letting it just softly lilt in the seagrass under the water. This is my favourite way to do the Zephyr Wind, our very first scene. We play this all on the pentatonic. It's the best way to get students to really commit to getting their hands on the piano without fear, because as we know, the pentatonic is beautiful to play because there are no wrong notes. So it's all on the black keys. Now, you'll all have heard of Bill Evans' magnificent, beautiful, sensitive pianist. He plays this thing called Peace Piece, and it's really a take on Gymnopédie, or Gymnopédie, however you pronounce that, by Sadie. And I just love this because it just reminds me of the gentleness of the wind and how sometimes it picks up those leaves and they just float according to wherever that wind takes them. So this one is really, really special, and actually my students don't have to be very advanced to do this. We also play it as a duet so they can just take the right hand improv. Using the C flat and the F in this as well. I love those extra notes. So the chords in that one are really easy to remember. It's just a G flat in your left hand and then striding up. And I actually just have students collect any of those black notes there in little groups of 3. So maybe the notes from B flat, D flat and E flat, and then go down to the B or the C flat and grab another little group of 3. G flat, C flat. And it's that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. It's so gentle, it actually puts me to sleep. Interestingly, sometimes I'll get my parents to come in, you know, the coaches that are with my students, even my really little students, and I'll have them just do that. They'll just go 1, 2, 3 with 2 hands. And I'll just tell them to grab a little handful of notes in their right hand, just making sure that they're always black notes. And then I'll have my little student playing on the black notes. As I said before while I was playing, if you want to add the C flat and the F to this improv, you've got a full G flat scale improv. And certainly once you get your advanced students to the point where they're coordinating both hands and doing a beautiful melodic run as well as keeping that pulse going, it's just absolutely gorgeous and really feels airy and light, like you want it to be for this scene.
I do love the Zeppelin. So I don't know, what do you reckon? There's some fun ideas there. So Irene Thompson, wow, yay. And can I have lessons with you? Oh, my love. Yes, please. I'm really glad you love it there, Irene. It's something that captivates my soul. Music and playing it from the very depths of your heart is such an exquisite thing to while away a few hours in the afternoon. Interestingly, with that, the Zeppelin one there, a little spoiler here for what's coming next when we reveal where we're going in the future on our part 3 of this advanced student webinar, is that, and we're currently working on accompaniment tracks that go with these scenes. And so that one, because it's so beautifully universal in its pentatonic, and so our very early, very beginner students can play along to an orchestral soundtrack with that kind of style in the background. It's just really exciting. So, but I'm not allowed to say any more about that. So look, basically that's everything I got for you guys. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. And I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out with us here at Inner Musician. I've had a ball. I always have a ball at these things. And it's an opportunity to let you guys know what our particular musical focus is when we're teaching our students. You know, we really believe that music is a key part of who we are as human beings. Music can inspire us to do amazing things. It can relax us, motivate us, excite us, and it can really help us find out who we are. And I think that's very powerful. Well, you know, we just want to help your students find their own inspiration through creative improvisation. And we found this amazing key that seems to unlock the door to this experience. And that key is movies, stories, rich cinematic landscapes to play along to really transport you. You actually feel when you start to play as if you're actually there. And we add motifs which build musical knowledge. And through playing and exploring and discovering each motif's individual effect on the music, as we found out through those extra chord tones, we learn to really listen and be sensitive to the moment. You know, it's kind of like taking your piano under the sea, surrounded by coral and the sound of the ocean. Imagine what it would be like to have your own playing take you there. Or transport your piano to a dried up riverbed in remote outback Australia. Play the sounds of the moaning earth as it cracks and as the rain finally comes to break the drought. Music is so powerful if you've learned how to deeply connect and feel the music you create. If this sounds like something you'd love to do for yourself or you'd like to give your students this opportunity, come and check us out at innermusician.com. We love our teachers and our students, and we're here to guide and inspire that journey. Our annual membership for teachers is literally the price of sharing a cup of coffee with me every week, okay? $3.50 for a cup of coffee or $180 for the year, and it's tax deductible. But we have a ball during our sit down while you're playing around and having a look at all our resources. And our student home resources are just $60 for a full journey, accessible for a lifetime of playing for the whole family. And you might ask, why is it so inexpensive? Well, honestly, this isn't just a business for me. In reality, it's my absolute passion. For over 15 years, I've been developing and exploring this unique approach, filming, composing, editing, coaching students and teachers all over the world to be truly part of the music that they play. So come over and join us. We'd love to walk alongside you as you explore these possibilities for yourselves and your students. So I'm wrapping up. We hope you've really enjoyed this webinar. It'll be available on our YouTube channel, so just go and search Inner Musician there and pass this on to your friends and your colleagues. Don't forget, our little freebie hand diagram is there for you if you just go to that link. And we would love to catch you at our last part 3 of teaching your more advanced students. And in that one, we're going to delve a little bit into mode playing, just my favorite 3. We're also going to give you a quick sneak peek of the direction that we're heading in moving forward. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Ciao. Love you guys. Oh, hey, look, forgot to give you the link for the freebie. So I'm going to pop it up and I'm just going to leave it on your screen so you can write it down. We'll leave that one up for a minute and you can go straight to it. There it is there. innermusician.com/hand. Too easy. Ciao.